Hello and welcome. I'm Robyn,
And I'm Gil.
and we're rocking the love.
We are rocking the love by a shoestring at the moment. We're happy to be here with you today, and we're excited about what's coming up. And we are continuing on with our Pride Month activities and emphasis. And today we have a theme of Rise Up.
Rise up. Reminds me of Agape Choir. Okay, so you need to like us if you haven't done that already, but you probably love us and you've done that numerous times if you're here. And make sure to check us out on all the social media and all that good stuff.
Subscribe to the YouTube and tell your friends. Anything else you need to do? No, other than that, we just invite you all to comment today. Let us know what you're thinking. Stay in touch. We always want to, it always makes a better show when we get to chat with you and hear what's going on. So tell us where you're from, where you're listening from, watching from rather, and what's going on.
So bear with us today because right now we don't have a producer, so it's just us. So we may be commercial free and all kinds of good stuff. But we have a great show coming up, and I know some of you are out there waiting to hear Doug Meyers, who is our guest today. And we'll tell you a little bit more about him in a minute. But now, here's the good news.
Here's the good news.
You go.
Oh, really? I go? Good news is
the good news of the week.
Good news of the week. You know what? It's been great fun. There have been so many things going on at the same time. It's been so relaxed in this house the last few days. We sent kids off to camp. They're loving it, and we're loving it. So that's a real plus. And I'm excited because I got asked to do a wedding that I need to fill in for somebody that couldn't do it. So I'm going to be doing that this weekend, and that's really fun. I haven't done one in a while, and so it's going to be kind of fun.
Yeah, I have to say my good news is pretty much the same. It's been just really nice. It's a whole different energy without kids around. It's great when kids are here. It's just a whole different energy when they're not. You just get to breathe a little more, and it's like you really get to answer questions for yourself instead of taking into consideration everybody who's here. So that's great.
And it's been a time of learning patience for me because I'm having to hang in there and wait for various things to happen, and everything takes time. Everything takes time. So we're in the middle of this potential move. Oh, well, actually, I'm in the middle of a definite move. And finding out like where things are, what we can do, what we can't do, what might work, what won't work, all those questions. It's an adventure. It's a real adventure.
Yes, it is. That's all I can say about that. But what I was just thinking about was anything from last week and last week's show. I want to thank our guest from last week again, Jeffrey Solomon. I'm sorry for our technical difficulties of playing the other tape. I hope everyone has gone to that place of House on the Moon and listen to the other story because it's so good. Make sure you do that if you haven't. But today we have a storyteller in his own right that we're going to bring on because we have no commercials or anything for you. We can just jump into our show. It's a new day. So our guest is someone who, let's see, we've known for about 13 years.
Yep.
He is an amazing practitioner of New Thought, a New Thought minister, as well as a chaplain working with the Walnut Creek Police Department. He is he's just a gifted human being. When you're around him, you just feel the love and the joy. And he's funny and he's fun and he's deep and all those good things. I don't know. He's also the leader of the co-facilitator of the diversity ministry.
Diversity Book Club. He'll clarify that for us.
Not book club.
I thought there was a book thing that they were
That's
doing.
a different thing.
Oh, that's a different one. Sorry.
There's so much diversity.
It's a diverse world.
It's a diverse world. No, this is the diversity inclusion group that meets once a month, and you're all welcome to come to, but he'll tell you all about it in Oakland. And let's just bring him on, because why wait?
So let's welcome our friend and spiritual traveler, Doug Meyers.
Hello, hello, hello.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you two?
We're good. I just want to be transparent, though. We are totally thrown off that we don't have a producer. I mean, it's good. It's weird, but it's just like, usually we have someone in a little box waving and doing things. And it's like, we're free.
Free at last.
Yeah, kid home alone. Anyway, okay. All right.
Oh my gosh, speak of the devil. I think he might have popped in.
There he is.
I'm guessing he had a little trouble with his internet as he had the other day. So.
All right. So Doug.
Yes.
Please correct our introduction.
So it's the Diversity Circle. That's the name of the group that meets once the fourth Friday of every month. January through October. And we just explore different aspects of diversity and inclusion. We had our June meeting last week, and we had Miss Renee, who is a non-binary, gender fluid femme trans, and they spoke about the use of pronouns and how that can be a leveling field. So their recommendation was so now oftentimes you'll see people, whether it's on a Zoom meeting or their email, and they'll put their pronouns, like, for myself, I use he, him, his. But what Miss Renee said is that when you introduce yourself to someone, you can say to them, hi, my name is Doug, and my pronouns are he and him. And then that sort of opens up the door to welcome them in and not feel any kind of trepidation. And then they in turn can share what pronouns they use. And it gets, it's interesting because it's, there's a young fellow at work who uses he, they. And so then it starts playing with your mind a little bit. And I was thinking, and then Miss Renee mentioned sometimes people are using things like C or Z. And it was interesting because it made me think back of Ernest Holmes when he came up with the thing itself, because consciously there's no way for us to grab onto that as God or spirit, which can come with its own baggage for people. And so the idea of using like C or Z as a pronoun, we don't have anything to grab onto.
Yeah. It's funny that you went straight there, because I wrote in my notes, thinking about what's happened over the last week, that I've been in a couple of conversations sort of around that challenge of pronouns and how do we address them, and the questions come up like, why do I have to tell you my pronouns, and then again, why do you have a need to tell me yours, and what you just shared gives a lot more understanding to those questions right there.
Yeah.
And I think it's, all of us are challenged because it is changing our language. It's changing our understanding of how we relate to others.
Well, let me just put it there. Not all of us are challenged.
Well,
Well,
okay.
because the kids I work with and I teach who are 5, 6, 7, 8, they're not challenged. I told Gil the other day that we play a name game, where I'll be like, okay, say your name and your age and your favorite ice cream. And one day I was just trying to think of something different. I was like, say your name and your age, and they go, and pronouns. I was like, okay. So I had all these 6 year olds going, I'm he, her, and and yesterday I had one of the kids who's 10 tell me, in the middle, and I just, for lack of whatever, I just try not to use any protein. I just try not to use them, and I did say, okay, well, she needs to da, 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 and she was like, my pronouns are he, his, and whatever. I was like him. I was like, okay, and I knew that, which was why I try not to do it, but I couldn't. It didn't register fast enough. But they don't have any problem. I mean, it's not like they're upset about it or anything. They're like really like flowing into what we do now and how we move in 2022. So, which is a good thing.
I agree. We learn from our young ones, and they also, they're unfiltered, and they're not. I've been on this planet for close to 63 years now, and there are things that are happening that I have to try and catch up with.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that,
You know, and it's interesting too, because like when uh, the young kids, when they took back or started using the term queer again. So for myself, I had friends who were my age who started referring to themselves as I'm a queer man, and I didn't. I still used the term gay, and that was because what was in my head was what I had carried with me, that it was a derogatory term, and I didn't like claiming that for myself, when that first happened, because I think it was maybe like in the 1990s, was when I started hearing that more and more, um, and so I think uh, it's totally a whole new world, and I think that little kids are as open and just willing to be really upfront is it's awesome.
Yeah, it
yeah,
is.
and not afraid to correct you,
Hmm.
but
And
without malice, but just hey, this is how it is.
well, yeah, this is who I am.
Yeah.
And the beautiful thing about that I think also is that their parents are giving them that space clearly. And I have another little boy who's kindergarten, so he's about 6. You know, one day they were talking about pronouns like in the back of my car, and he said, "I don't know. Some day I feel like a girl, and some days I feel like a boy." So he's like, "So today I'm," And I was like, "All right." I mean, whatever. At least they're processing it. It's not like, no, you can't feel like that. You
Right.
know. I mean, and who knows where everyone will come out, but it's like I remember days where I felt like a girl and where I felt like a boy. And I remember days where I felt like, why couldn't I be a boy? You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So, I mean, who knows? It's just, I mean, it's great that there's that space, and that parents, at least a lot of parents around here, seem to be on board.
Yeah.
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 So,
Well,
but this has come a long way. we this is not where we began this. So when Gil said "Rise Up" as a title, I had to really think about it. But then I feel like I mean, it's all a rising, but I feel like, some days I feel really proud, and other days I feel like we're not getting anything, But I mean, it's been such a journey to get where we are, and clearly it feels like it's about to be a journey to stay where we are.
Absolutely.
So, what can you add to that?
Well, it was funny because when I saw the theme for today being Rise Up, of course, I'm I love Broadway musicals, so of course what immediately popped into my head was Hamilton, and then there's a song. I'm not sure if it's called Rise from Company. Um, so those are the first two things that popped into my head. So it's like, go figure, this gay guy is thinking of Broadway musicals. But then when I really sort of sat down and was thinking about it, I was like, well, everyone sort of uses Stonewall, right, as kind of the marker and the turning point for recognition and freedom for the LGBTQ plus community. And while that was one of, or maybe perhaps the most significant event, there was a lot of stuff that actually happened beforehand. Because I think it was in like, I'm not 100% sure, 58 or 59, there was a donut shop in LA called Cooper's Donuts. And it was, I think, an all-night donut shop, and it was often frequented by like drag queens and transgender folks and gay men and lesbians. And the police one night went in and arrested 3 people. And the patrons that night fought back. And they were throwing donuts and cups of coffee at the police officers, because they it's like, I'm not backing down. I'm tired of getting roughed up by the cops. And so that was kind of one of I think was maybe one of the first sort of riots, if you will. And then about 7 years later, actually in San Francisco in the Tenderloin, it was kind of a similar thing. There was a place called Compton's Cafeteria, and it too was like an all-night place. And back then, there were a lot of there's a lot of prostitution in the Tenderloin, and the transgender sex workers often would go to Compton's Cafeteria, because back then they weren't welcome into gay bars, and same thing. The police would come in often to make arrests, and one of the drag queens threw her coffee at a police officer, and it turned into a riot, and the windows got smashed. They burned a police car outside, and it was, I think, well, certainly for San Francisco, it was the first kind of marker of the people within the LGBTQ community like rising up and saying enough is enough. And then that led in, of course, to Stonewall, which I think was like 3 days maybe worth of rioting.
Wow. Well, like when you tell that story, I think it's the same story we've heard for multiple groups of people, who have finally said enough is enough. And in that saying that, they've all taken a lot of heat. And I know that's the case there. It was a turning point, and at the same time, it was barely a turning point. You know, I mean, it was just the spark. There wasn't a fire yet. It
Right.
took a long time to get the fire burning, you know. Um, and it takes a lot of intention to continue on that, to continue to walk a road that says, you know, you're not recognizing who I am or who we are, but you need to. Um, and I applaud people who've been able to do that for themselves in so many different cases.
Yeah, I think what's interesting is the thread, at least with those three events specifically, um, that it included drag queens and trans people,
Mm.
because uh, uh, to this day, now certainly drag has uh, become an art form, and it's much more present. I mean, certainly with uh, RuPaul Charles and the RuPaul's Drag Race on television, and the celebrities, if you will, created um, of the people that do drag, is dramatically making it much more visible for people, and it's not just you know gender or doing impersonations of dressing up as Marilyn Monroe or Judy Garland, right? They're elevating drag to a whole different level, um, and drag queens and especially trans people still um, are often marginalized, and I think that for you know as trans people become much more open in our society, they're also still um, the targets of a lot of hatred, and especially trans women of color. Because oftentimes they, to make ends meet, will do sex work, and there's a very high percentage rate of trans women each year uh, that are murdered. So there's still a lot of work for all of us to do, and rising up collectively to make to celebrate everybody, because that's what it's about.
Can you just comment on whether or not that bias, um, how it may still exist, or how it has existed even within the gay and lesbian and that community?
Well, I mean, um, so like I mentioned back early on, the gay bars were not welcoming um, to us trans women specifically. And so there were separate bars that were more drag bars back then, and a bunch of them were in the Tenderloin. Um, but I think that I was thinking back about the just like the gay community. So when I came out, it was like 1978, I think, and there was a lot of, I mean, the white gay community carried with it a lot of the prejudices that came from the greater society. So there were very specific bars. So there was um, in the Castro, there was a bar that was primarily for like black men and white men who like black men over on Polk Street. There was an Asian bar in the Mission. There were a couple of bars that catered towards Latino men. And then, of course, lesbians had a couple of bars as well. So it was very segmented. Um, and often I can remember they didn't even want like cisgender women coming into the bars. So one of the blockers they would be able to do is, because this was sort of, disco era, and open-toed heels were very popular, like candies, for example. And if a woman showed up to the door to go in and was wearing open-toed high heels, they would say, "Sorry, you can't come in because of your shoes."
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm. Wow.
There's so many things. I want to welcome John Chastain
Hi,
and
John.
Laura Topper to the show. And Laura's asking, can you talk about dead naming?
I I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what that is actually.
Okay.
No, he cannot. Sorry, Laura, but it was a good question. Obviously, someone should if we can't. I mean, and I think that's such an important point. Actually, I was thinking about this when you were talking because in conversations with many people, many gay people, um, admittedly, just because you're gay, you're not the authority on all of it. You don't know everything about everything. I mean, you do. That's why we invited you, but someone else. Just
Yeah.
kidding. No,
I
you
think
know what I mean.
I think the just a quick note is the dead naming idea is when you keep referring to someone by their previous how they were.
Oh,
I think that's what it refer. I just recently learned that.
Oh yeah, on our show.
But I don't know anything about it other than that that's what it is, So, yeah.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah. Thank you, John. Interesting.
yeah,
Yeah. No, that's just like that's completely disrespectful of who someone is. I mean, it's one thing to say, my pronouns are they, them, and then if my chosen name was Chastity, and you're still calling me Brian, that's just it. That's unacceptable and rude.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's just another way to marginalize and to say that it's not important.
Well, and I don't see you, right?
Yeah.
well, and just playing the flip side of the coin, you know, also, I mean, people have a hard time with this, so if people are in denial, they're in denial. I'm not saying that's right. I'm just saying there's more than just one possibility. Does that make sense? John says several of my friends say it's very hurtful and cruel when done intentionally, a way of denying.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's yes. And it's interesting, like I was at a conference where um, a transgender woman was speaking and giving people tips about, how to um, embody and all of this in the new thought community, in this year that we're living in, kind of thing. And yeah, there was a point where, admittedly, my head wanted to explode, and I wanted to go, "All right, already. I don't want to learn anything else. I'm done. I don't want to know anymore." It's a lot to take in. Not that I'm not going to, and not that I haven't, but I'm just saying, like the other day, I was having a conversation with people, and I was like, okay, you guys, blah, 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 blah. I go, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Because it was four women. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to say you guys. I meant, and they started laughing. They're like, I know, I do it all the time. I'm from the South. I da 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 da. But it's like, I'm so hyper aware now that, like, when I make a mistake, I feel really bad, you know? So it's a big learning for those of us over 10, you know?
No, I'm right there with you, Robin. I did exactly the same thing yesterday. I was speaking to a woman, and I do my best to say "folks" now. But we were talking, and it's like, "So when are you guys doing X, Y, and Z?" And as soon as it sort of spilled out of my mouth, it's like, mental note, mental note.
Yeah. Yeah, it's weird. It's a very strange.
So, Doug, when we talked before, you shared a little bit about what was interesting to me, and that was even how the the pride flag has evolved, and what the meaning is around that, and what how that talks about diversity and inclusion.
Yeah. So um, the uh, the original flag actually had 9 colors on it when Gilbert created it in '78, and it went hot pink was for sex, and then red was for life, yellow was sunshine, orange, I'm drawing a blank. Um, Green was nature. Then I think there was the turquoise, which was magic. And then there was indigo and violet, which was spirit. And they were having issues getting the hot pink fabric, and perhaps the turquoise too. But when they started to mass market them, it was easier to do 7 stripes, and so they cut out the pink and the turquoise blue. And so what you see now is kind of the red through down through the purple. But a couple of years ago, they start, and so like if you look at like a lot of if you happen to see any of like the Pride Parade on Sunday, there were all sorts of different kinds of flags that were represented because a lot of groups within the greater community have a separate flag. And the most recent one was there's a chevron coming into like a V sort of into the rainbow stripes. And the first one was white, baby blue, and pink, which is the trans flag colors. And then there was also black and brown for black and brown people, because they often were not, as I mentioned earlier, they weren't included really in the group as a whole. They were totally marginalized. And then the most recent one now has, so there's the black, the brown chevron coming in, the pink, the baby blue, and the white, and then there's yellow with a purple circle in it, and that's that's the intersex flag. So they're fusing the so they call this one the progress pride flag, and it's much so it's also a way for the community to acknowledge itself on a wider spectrum, and to have to those that see this new flag are can see themselves represented in the LGBTQ plus community, and I bet it continues to evolve.
Yeah, no
Yeah.
doubt. No doubt. Okay, well, we're going to take a break. And when we come back, we'll get some more questions answered. So put them into the chat. And we'll see you in a minute right back here on New Thought Media Network. Welcome back. I'm Robyn.
And I'm Gil.
And
This is Rockin your Love. The Love. I can't even get it right. What's wrong?
That's a longer show. What's wrong? Okay. Oh. So here we are with our guest, Doug Meyers. And we are just exploring rising up in the gay pride movement and all of the things that are happening today. And I'm lost in thought. Well, and Linda is joining us. She says, "Okay, I am getting a headache thinking about why I can't say hi guys to a group of women. Do women really care about that? Who cares about that and why?" Hi, Doug.
I like that.
That's a good question. And just, should I throw in my other question at the same time?
Sure.
So I was just having an off-air conversation with Gil about sex and gender and how people think, people are confused with gender now because it's transgender and gender binary and what does that mean? And is it the same as your sex? And
what does that mean?
And what
it seems like some of the words have shifted meaning, and also we've used words to help us understand better what we're really talking about.
So where do we start? Let's start with Linda. Do women really care about that? I guess I'm the woman of the day. I don't know. I think yes. I think some women do. I think in this. I think more importantly, it's not so much that they care as that. I'm using that word loosely, but it's that in this time of diversity, inclusion, and doing the right thing, and really trying to honor and respect and understand each other, I think that people are aware. People are hearing things differently. So, like, will women lose their mind if you say that? Probably not a lot of women, but some yes, because they feel like it's derogatory.
They feel left out.
They feel like I'm not a guy.
Well, it reminds me of going back to when I was growing up, and the big thing was that we were reinterpreting biblical scripture to be inclusive of male and female. And did anyone really care? Well, we've gone from that point to doing that throughout everything in our language, to reinterpreting away from assuming male pronouns, because it assumed, it felt to a whole group of people like they were left out. Even though at some level it was meant to be generic, right? So, and then that's part of the evolution.
Yeah, the patriarchy is certainly well established. Even when certainly with God being referred to as he, and but even in the Science of Mind textbook, he almost wrote the initial version of 28, and then it came out again in 42, something like that, and he uses he all the time. And I think that as a society, how we've evolved, to your point, Gil, people are reframing it, and I think that there are probably in our in the New Thought movement, there are probably people who that it's gospel and you don't change any of the wording; it stays as it is, and they're not even that willing to read it as even he, she, or they.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think that's one of the keys in our society, is that it's easy to blame it, if you will, on that that's how it's done, and somehow you can't change it, when in fact it's just a matter of adjusting our thinking. It's really adjusting our thinking. And I think that's the hardest thing, because I heard those exact same arguments around biblical scripture, and in the Protestant church. So I mean, and I noticed that we hear the same arguments against. We're hearing the same arguments today regarding women and abortion and all of those things that we've heard about every other thing. It's the same argument about how it's going to break down the family if you change it, and we can't do this and we can't do that and we can't do the other. We have to get back to the right place, where everything was rosy and nice, in the 50s when all the black people were separate, and I mean, all these kinds of things that people forget, that half of the whole thing, and all the gay people were in the closet and all, I mean, does that make any sense to go back to that? I know. Sorry, I got a little sidetracked.
No. I mean, it's kind of frightening, because I feel like, just with the Supreme Court reversing Roe versus Wade, and I mean, Clarence Thomas, not so quietly, drew attention to contraception usage, gay marriage, and then also sexual activity, right? And overturning all of those. And it's like, talk about going back to the 50s. It's like, it's a little frightening. But I wanted to jump back just a little bit, Robyn, to what you said when we started, and you're talking about gender and gender fluidity. One of the so there's lots of acronyms that get tossed around now, and another one that you may start seeing more of is A, F, A, B, and AM, AB, which is assigned female at birth and assigned male at birth. So even though, certainly what used to be true for children that were intersex, the doctor would determine what their gender was, and would do a corrective surgery, if you will. And what they were finding out is as these young people, started hitting puberty, even though they had been assigned male, that's not who they were. They were female. And so now, if that, they're trying to really stop that practice, and to let the person grow up and self-identify, because they may not want to have any operation.
Yeah.
If it's not physically necessary for them to be, healthy and whole, then yeah, that makes total sense, right?
Yeah.
But
and like to the little child you were speaking to, Robyn, about, so he was assigned male at birth, but on Tuesdays he feels like a girl.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Yeah. 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 It's it's one of those things that feels like we're coming out of a space where there was all these rules about it, and now it feels like there's no rules, but you have to know all of them, and so it's interesting keeping up. And just going back to what Linda said, she wrote, maybe because I grew up during Women's Lib, I realized that in many ways I did not want to draw attention to being a woman. I get it, though. Times are changing.
That's interesting, Linda. That's interesting to sort of decide that I don't want to be fully seen because there's too much controversy around being who I am. I can imagine that flows to a lot of people.
Well, I mean, I can speak to that too. When I was in my 20s, um, I would make a very conscious choice if I wanted to pass. So I would drop the um, I would drop my voice to a lower level, so I didn't sound like I was, if there was any hint that I was, not a gay guy. And I think back on that, and it's like, dang, that was like in the 80s. And there was still a part of me where I absolutely did not want to be seen. And I think that, uh, it, the courage that I just, think back of all of these people that have fought for our rights across the front. I'm not talking just LGBTQ rights, everything, women's rights, people of color, everybody. Um, the courage that it takes to put yourself out there, um, and be proud of who you are, and to demand that people see you for who you are.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. When you're saying that, what it reminds me of is growing up um, in my house. We were very gay friendly, very everything friendly. And but no, what that reminds me of is, though, as a little kid, I had all these gay uncles around me, dancing in the living room, and singing show tunes at the piano and being who they were. But I heard the conversations about who they couldn't be, and the things that happened when they were out, and things like that. And I think, because I was thinking about what Linda said and what you're saying, and I'm thinking, yeah, I really have never been afraid to be me. I've always been like, this is who I am. And not only am I this, but I'm this, and this, And I think part of that, as you're saying it, I think that courage came from being around all of my gay uncles and, people in general that were willing to be, who they were, or willing to try being who they might want to be. Like, I mean, in our house, we were also very religion friendly. So, I grew up my grandmother was a Catholic saint, and my mother, who had been to Catholic school, was, I'll be anything but Catholic. So we're Jewish, we're Buddhist, and learning all of those things. So I was always like privy to all these things that made me go, okay, this is who I am. I can be whoever I want to be, and not be afraid, which I didn't think was any big deal, but I realize it is.
Well, I think all of us, and Doug, I'm sure you can chime in on this. All of us struggle or have struggled with being who we are, with being willing to show up as who we are. And I think as a whole, society makes it so that we all want to pass as whatever the group is looking for, right? And
We all want to fit in.
yeah, but that's what I mean. We all want to be as if we're like that, because that makes it easier. That makes it easier to do what we need to do, and also makes us feel like we're included. And so all of this work around diversity and inclusion, I think the key really is that inclusion piece, to recognize, how do we include people in a way that they don't feel that need. They really feel like they can be who they are. How can we create spaces that do that?
Yeah. And as you're saying that, it's also reminding me of working with teenagers. And we did a piece on um, tagging. And they wrote the piece, and it was all about, can you see me? And that's really what it's all about. I mean, we're all, can you see me? Can you see who I am? Um, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I work for a software company called Workday, and the company has they call it belonging councils. So there's like a women's belonging council, there's a Jewish belonging council, there's a Pride belonging council. So there's all sorts of different ones, which is awesome to work at a company that's that puts that much emphasis on inclusion and belonging and equity across the company, because that's really what some of the core values are. And so I feel like super fortunate to work in a company like that, and I'm compared to how I was in my 20s, if I'm interviewing someone for a position and I introduce myself, the dogs have just joined me. Hopefully they won't bark. I say, I live with my partner, Joe. We've been together for, close to 20 years now. I have 3 dogs, blah, blah, blah. So I'm like very upfront, but I also, I just want them to know it's like, if you have a problem with working with a gay man, then, that's on you, not me.
You have a problem. Yeah. Yeah. No, that's great. That's great. I just want to share that Linda said, I was in the business world as a young woman. I wore men's wear suits with skirts and ties. They were very cool. I was competing with men by trying to be like them.
Mm.
Yeah. And I guess that sorry, having my own revelation here today, guys, women, everybody. Folks. Yeah. Yeah, because what I'm realizing, like when I see that, what Linda said, I don't know that I ever compete trying to be like anybody. If I'm competing with a man, I'm trying to be better than him. I'm trying to surpass them. So it's interesting. It's just interesting.
You do like to compete.
That I do. I do like to win. But again, another show.
Well, and it's, however we show up and how we want to be seen, right? That's sort of our own version of drag.
Yeah. And it brings us back around to the whole pronoun thing, is where we get to tell people, at least in part, how we want to be viewed, how we want to be seen.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Doug. It's such, I don't know, there's so much work to be done, and yet there's so much that's been done. And, I have to just stand in being proud on some level of how far we've come. Where we're going, I don't know, but how far we've come is pretty amazing, I think.
Well, I just encourage all of us to, as the times are changing, that we, individually and collectively rise up to the best of our ability to be, not saying to riot, you have to do what's comfortable for you, but certainly the one thing that we can all do is to vote. So,
yes,
vote in the midterms coming up, and certainly in the general in 2024.
Absolutely.
And it's been. I just wanted to say thank you, Robyn and Gil, for inviting me. This has been really fun.
Oh, thank you. It's been really fun to talk about this and hear your perspective and your laughter.
And it was nice virtually seeing John and Linda and Laura.
All right. Well, that's it. We're going into July. It's going to be July coming up. And we've got lots of surprises in July. We won't have Gil for 2 weeks.
I will be gone the next 2, so there'll be surprise.
Not the next 2. You're here 1.
No, I'm not. Next week.
You'll be gone sometime. And we'll figure that out. And we'll have a guest host. Yes. Gosh, I don't know. What am I supposed to say? Hostess? Guest?
A guest host? No. who can
Well, it's kind of Robyn in your field.
Whoops, what happened? We lost.
He took it out.
Oh,
I was just going to say, like in your field, Robyn, of acting, right? How people just simply use actor now.
So a host is okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we will have one, and she, her. I know that's how she identifies. Is very fun, and you'll love her. So we'll see you in July. Please, you know where to go to share your love at newthoughtmedianetwork.org with a little donation is always gratefully accepted. And we love to continue doing the good work.
and once again, thank you so much, Doug, for being a part of the show today.
Thank you.
And we're just honoring our producer, Michael Mangus, and knowing that his technical difficulties today forced us to jump into the frying pan. And so we just want to acknowledge him for all the work that he does.
All right, y'all. We'll see you next week, and keep rocking the love out there. You know it's needed. Thank you.